The night split open with Naomi's cry, echoing through the farmhouse walls like a wound that refused silence. She pressed her hands to her chest as if trying to hold her heart together. Samuel, the farmer who never learned tenderness, stood rigid near the door, his broad shoulders casting long shadows against the lantern's glow. Naomi said, "Why does love feel like a punishment when it's all I ever gave you?" Her voice cracked, breaking the quiet of midnight. Samuel's jaw tightened, his silence a heavier betrayal than words. The storm outside rattled the windows, rain pelting like shattered glass. In that moment, grief hung between them like a third presence, heavier than rage, sharper than sorrow. Naomi's tears fell, shimmering under the dim light. He turned away, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of regret, as if one night could undo years of distance and pain. The silence roared louder than her sobs. The storm quieted, but the silence between them deepened. Naomi's breath shook as she whispered, "I gave you my life, Samuel." He turned, his eyes haunted, yet his lips stayed sealed. The wooden floor creaked as she rose, her nightdress clinging damp from the humidity. Samuel's gaze flicked to her then away, as though facing her truth was harder than laboring the land. His farm had always been his armor, but tonight it felt like a prison. Naomi's tears slowed, yet her heart still bled through every word. She thought of years wasted on hope, of nights where she slept alone, though married. Samuel said nothing, but his silence admitted guilt more loudly than confession. The lantern's dim glow illuminated scars not on skin but in love. She wanted to scream, but her voice broke into a whisper again. "When will you love me back?" Morning light crept through rain-washed windows, soft but heavy with tension. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, eyes red, fingers curled around a chipped mug. Samuel moved quietly, boots heavy on wooden floor, every step deliberate. He poured coffee yet never looked at her. Naomi said, "Do you even see me?" Her voice cracked with exhaustion. He froze, gripping the cup tightly, eyes fixed on dark liquid. The farm field stretched beyond the window, glistening with storm's aftermath, but neither spoke of harvests. His silence built walls taller than fences outside. Naomi thought of love stories she had dreamed of as a girl, wondering how she ended here. Samuel finally glanced at her, lips parting but no words coming. His eyes carried regret, but regret without action was another wound. The fields beckoned with the call of labor, but Samuel lingered at the window, his broad back turned to Naomi. She watched him, her eyes hollow yet burning with words unspoken. "I can't keep loving alone," she whispered, her voice thin but sharp. He stiffened, fists tightening at his sides, but he said nothing. The sight of endless fields reminded her of the endless wait for affection. Samuel's silence felt like another storm. Naomi rose, her body trembling with defiance and ache, and stepped closer, her shadow touching his. He glanced at her reflection in glass, eyes heavy with conflict. For years he fought the soil, but never his own heart. Now, both battles threatened to crush him. Naomi said, "One night can change everything, Samuel, but only if you let it." Later, Naomi walked into the yard, air thick with rain's memory. She stood barefoot in damp soil, gazing at the wide expanse of farmland. Her chest ached with both pride and grief. Samuel followed quietly, his boots crunching earth. But she didn't turn. The land he loved had stolen him, she thought. Yet it was also the land that tied them together. Naomi whispered, "Love should grow, not die here." Her words carried across the yard, fragile but unyielding. Samuel's face softened as he watched her, realizing she was stronger than his silence. The clouds parted, letting sunlight fall across her form like a promise of change. He stepped closer, hesitation marking every breath. The first act of love was not words, but choosing to stay. And for the first time, Samuel chose to walk toward her. Naomi sat on the porch steps, the morning sun breaking through clouds, warming the damp earth. She pulled her shawl tighter, staring at fields that seemed endless. Samuel stepped outside, his boots dragging with weariness, pausing behind her. She whispered, Do you ever wonder if this life is enough? He looked at her, the question catching him unprepared, then turned his gaze to the land. His silence stung sharper than denial. The wind carried scents of wet soil and wild grass, but Naomi's heart smelled only of loneliness. She thought of the girl she once was, full of hope, and wondered where that dream had gone. Samuel clenched his jaw, wanting to speak yet afraid of what truth might sound like. Naomi finally rose, her eyes shining with pain and defiance, leaving him with the weight of her question. Later, Naomi walked among rows of damp crops, her dress brushing against leaves, glistening with dew. She pressed her palm to the soil, grounding herself in silence. Samuel followed at a distance, his shadow falling across furrows. Naomi said, "The land grows because you give it care. Why can't love grow the same way?" Her voice carried softly, yet struck like thunder. Samuel halted, unable to answer, his hands tightening around the brim of his hat. The farm that gave him pride now mocked him with questions he couldn't bear. Naomi rose, dust clinging to her skin, her gaze firm. She would no longer beg for love, she would demand it. Samuel felt her strength shift the air between them. His heart beat hard, realizing silence might cost him more than words ever could. Inside the farmhouse, Naomi stood by the old dresser, fingers brushing across framed photos of a younger Samuel smiling with family. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. She murmured, "You once knew how to smile. Where did that man go?" Samuel entered quietly, stopping in the doorway, his face unreadable. He said nothing, but his eyes betrayed memory. Naomi turned toward him, voice breaking. "I didn't marry silence, Samuel. I married a man I thought could love me." His breath caught, though no words came. The weight of family ghosts pressed on him, every unspoken history choking his voice. Naomi's eyes burned with tears, but her spine stayed straight. Her reflection stood taller than her body, showing the dignity she clung to. Samuel lowered his head, the silence heavy enough to shatter glass. Naomi sat at the wooden table with her closest friend, Clara, who had stopped by with bread. Clara's sharp eyes studied her, catching the pain Naomi tried to hide. "You can't keep bleeding for him," Clara said gently but firmly. Naomi shook her head, whispering, "I don't know how to stop. Loving him feels like breathing." Clara reached across the table, taking her hand, grounding her with truth. "Breathing shouldn't feel like drowning," Clara replied, voice steady. Naomi's tears threatened, but she forced them back, not wanting pity. Clara's presence was the voice of reason, a reminder she wasn't alone. The silence between them carried a sisterhood built on years of shared laughter and tears. Outside, the fields stretched wide, but inside, Naomi's heart felt both caged and comforted. That night, Naomi lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling as moonlight filtered through curtains. Samuel's heavy breaths filled the room, but not the emptiness between them. She whispered into the dark, "I just want you to see me." Her voice trembled, carried by shadows. Samuel stirred, half awake, his hand twitching but never reaching for her. Naomi turned on her side, facing away, her body curled into itself. The memories of promises and vows haunted her, echoing louder than the silence beside her. Tears slid quietly onto the pillow, soaking into cotton. She wondered if love had already died, or if it was waiting for one final chance. Samuel's eyes opened briefly, watching her back, a flicker of guilt burning in his chest, but still he said nothing. The afternoon sun burned hot as Naomi walked through the marketplace, her steps purposeful, her heart heavy. People greeted her with polite smiles, but she barely noticed. Among the crowd, she caught sight of Elias, Samuel's cousin, his gaze lingering longer than it should. Naomi stiffened, her pulse quickening at the weight of unspoken history. Elias smirked softly, saying, "You deserve more than silence, Naomi." His words sliced through her restraint. She turned sharply, anger and shame colliding. Samuel's absence had left her vulnerable, and Elias knew it. Naomi whispered, "Don't you dare," but her voice betrayed a tremor. The market noise drowned her pounding heart, yet inside she felt exposed. The storm between love, loyalty, and temptation grew louder, threatening to unravel her resolve with every passing moment. Back at the farm, Samuel worked the soil with rough determination, his hands blistering under the weight of the plow. Sweat dripped down his brow, but the labor did little to quiet his mind. He thought of Naomi's distant eyes, her voice echoing in silence. He slammed the plow harder, muttering, "Damn it, why can't I say the words?" His chest ached with frustration, caught between pride and yearning. The land obeyed his strength, yet his heart refused his command. As the sun dipped, shadows stretched across the fields, making the farm feel lonelier than ever. Samuel stopped, gripping the handle tightly, staring at the horizon where Naomi had walked away that morning. The soil beneath him seemed more forgiving than the woman waiting inside. His silence was breaking him slowly, piece by piece. That evening, Naomi confronted Samuel in the yard, her eyes blazing with questions she could no longer swallow. "Do you even care that I'm slipping away from you?" she demanded, her voice steady though trembling inside. Samuel froze, his jaw tightening as if words were a foreign weapon. He said, "I provide for you. Isn't that enough?" The words fell heavy, cold, and Naomi's heart cracked further. She stepped closer, whispering fiercely, "I never wanted just bread and shelter. I wanted you." The silence after her confession felt like another storm rolling in. Samuel's eyes flickered with something, fear, guilt, or love, but he turned his face away. Naomi's tears refused to fall this time. Instead, her anger burned like fire. She spun, walking inside, leaving him in the shadows of his own silence. Clara returned that night, her voice sharp with warning as she found Naomi sitting on the porch. "Don't let Elias play with your pain," she cautioned. Naomi sighed, whispering, "I don't want him," but his words cut through Samuel's silence. Clara squeezed her hand, firm yet tender. "Silence is dangerous, but temptation is deadlier," she said, eyes piercing. Naomi looked out at the fields glowing under moonlight, her mind torn between longing for Samuel's love and the dangerous comfort Elias offered. The crickets sang a restless chorus, mirroring the tension in her chest. Naomi whispered, "I just want to be seen, to be wanted." Clara's grip tightened, her voice steady as steel. "Then make him see you, Naomi. Don't let your story be written by someone else's betrayal." Later that night, Samuel sat alone in the barn, lantern light flickering over stacks of hay. His breath came heavy, shoulders slumped under invisible weight. He muttered, "She deserves better," the words spilling before he could stop them. For the first time, his silence fractured into confession, though no one heard. He buried his face in his hands, torn between pride and the woman who haunted his every thought. Outside, the night pressed close, full of secrets and whispers. Naomi, standing at the doorway unseen, caught the tremor in his voice. Her chest tightened, torn between hope and despair. She stepped back quietly, leaving him to his shadows, knowing tomorrow would demand answers neither of them could avoid. The night carried both promise and pain, holding its breath for what came next. The morning began quietly, but Naomi's world cracked open when she discovered a folded letter tucked in Samuel's old jacket. The ink was faded, the handwriting unfamiliar. Her hands trembled as she read the words, love letters addressed to Samuel, written by a woman she had never known. Her chest burned with betrayal, confusion flooding her heart. Samuel entered, his face paling, as he spotted the letter in her hands. Naomi whispered, "Who is she?" The silence that followed cut deeper than any answer. His lips parted, then shut again, his eyes haunted with guilt. Naomi's breath grew sharp, her body trembling between fury and heartbreak. She had always feared another woman lived inside his silence, and now her fear had a name. Naomi's voice rose, fierce yet fragile, echoing off the wooden beams. "Was my love never enough? Did you save your heart for someone else?" Samuel stepped forward, reaching as if to take the letter, but Naomi pulled back, her eyes blazing. "Tell me, Samuel, before I lose every piece of myself waiting." His silence fractured, his voice rough. It was years ago, before you, before us. Naomi shook her head, disbelief coursing through her veins. The letter was not just ink. It was proof of secrets buried in his silence. She turned away, tears finally falling. Samuel's words lingered, heavy with regret, but regret could not erase the betrayal now carved into her heart. The distance between them widened into a canyon. Clara arrived after Naomi sent for her face etched with concern as she listened to the truth spill out. Naomi's voice cracked. All these years, I'd begged for love while he carried another woman in his silence. Clara's eyes hardened as she turned to Samuel. Secrets wrought marriages, and yours has been festering too long. Samuel lowered his head, shame weighing his shoulders. Naomi gripped Clara's hand, trembling with anger and despair. Clara whispered, "Don't let him break you, Naomi. He must choose honesty or lose everything." Naomi's gaze cut through Samuel, sharp as shattered glass. He had never looked smaller, standing in the corner with silence as his shield. The air between them felt like splintered wood, fragile, ready to snap. That evening, Elias appeared at the gate, his presence a shadow against the fading sun. His smirk carried arrogance, but his eyes burned with something darker. "Secrets always surface, cousin," Elias said coldly, his gaze shifting to Naomi. Her chest tightened, fury and dread colliding. Samuel snapped, "Stay out of this." But Elias stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You thought you could bury the past, but it always comes back." Naomi's hands clenched at her sides, her mind swirling with betrayal and the dangerous pull Elias carried. The farm felt smaller under his gaze, as though history itself had come to strangle her hope. The air was thick, ready to ignite. Night fell heavy, shadows thick inside the farmhouse. Naomi sat alone at the table, the letter spread before her like a wound that would not close. Samuel entered, his face weary, voice unsteady. "I was a different man then," he whispered, but Naomi did not look up. She said, "You're still hiding from me, Samuel. Love cannot grow in lies." His chest tightened, words choking in his throat. He wanted to reach her, but every step felt like walking through fire. Naomi's tears glistened in lantern light as she whispered, "If you can't give me truth, you'll never give me love." Samuel's silence wrapped around them again, heavier than the storm outside. The night ended not with comfort, but with two hearts split wide open. The storm inside Naomi finally broke. She stood in the middle of the farmhouse, her voice trembling but sharp. "I gave you everything, Samuel. Why wasn't it enough?" Samuel's fists clenched as if holding back words too heavy to release. His chest rose and fell, breath ragged, eyes locked on her with unspoken guilt. He shouted, "Because I don't know how to love the way you need me to." The words ripped through the silence, shaking the air between them. Naomi staggered back, her tears fierce, but her spirit unbroken. "Then learn," she whispered, her voice cutting deeper than her scream. The air thickened with the weight of their confessions, love and pain colliding like thunder. Samuel's voice cracked, his anger folding into despair. "I never learned love, Naomi. My father left, my mother hardened, and I built walls to survive." His confession spilled out raw, unpolished, trembling with truth. Naomi's heart clenched, her tears slowing as she finally saw the scar beneath his silence. "And yet you punish me for wounds I never made," she said, her voice a mix of sorrow and steel. Samuel dropped to the chair, his hands covering his face, shoulders shaking with the weight of years unspoken. The farmhouse walls seemed to shrink around them, the truth echoing louder than the storm outside. Naomi stepped closer, torn between anger and compassion, her heart raging in conflict. The slam of the door startled them both. Elias stepped in, his smirk thin, his voice sharp. "Secrets always ruin you, cousin. Maybe Naomi deserves a man who won't hide behind silence." Samuel leapt to his feet, fury flaring. "You don't belong here," he roared, fists clenched, veins visible in the dim light. Naomi froze, her heart pounding as tension rose like fire. Elias moved closer, his gaze burning into Naomi as he whispered, You don't need to suffer his silence when you could have fire. Naomi's chest ached as temptation collided with fury, the room thick with betrayal and danger. Samuel's jaw tightened as he stood between them, his silence finally breaking into defiance. Samuel stepped forward, his voice shaking but fierce. "She's my wife, and I'll fight for her." The words carried a power Naomi had never heard in him before. Elias laughed, mocking, "Now you find your courage, too late." Naomi's breath hitched, her hands trembling as she whispered, "Stop this madness." Samuel turned to her, his eyes raw, unguarded. "I may fail you, Naomi, but I won't lose you to him." For the first time, truth and love spilled from his lips in the same breath. Elias sneered, but Naomi's gaze stayed fixed on Samuel, her heart breaking open with fragile hope. The night vibrated with tension, every heartbeat louder than thunder. Naomi's tears spilled freely as she stepped between the two men. Her voice shook, but carried unshakable power. "I am not a prize to be won. I am a woman who deserves love, truth, and respect." Elias's smirk faltered, his arrogance slipping. Samuel's breath caught, his eyes glistening with both guilt and determination. Naomi turned toward him, her voice softer but resolute. "If you want me, Samuel, you must fight not with fists but with your heart." Samuel's silence cracked into a vow, his chest rising as he whispered, "Then I'll fight with everything I have." The storm outside roared, but inside the battle of love had finally ignited with raw fire. The storm outside had passed, leaving the farmhouse wrapped in quiet tension. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter that had changed everything. Samuel entered slowly, his steps heavy with shame. "Naomi," he whispered, his voice trembling. She did not look up, her fingers tracing the faded ink like it was a scar carved into her. "I don't want pieces of you," she said, her voice sharp yet fragile. "I want all of you or nothing." Samuel swallowed hard, his chest rising with a painful breath. His silence no longer felt like armor, but like chains dragging them both under. Naomi's eyes finally met his, and for the first time, he had nowhere left to hide. Samuel's hands trembled as he pulled out the chair opposite her, sitting for the first time with his defenses down. "I was wrong," he said, the words raw, scraping his throat. Naomi's eyes glistened, but she held them steady, refusing to be swayed by half-truths. "You built walls, Samuel, and I broke myself against them." His head lowered, shame casting shadows over his face. "I don't want to lose you," he murmured, the confession both desperate and late. Naomi's lips parted, her breath unsteady. The pain in her chest ached like a wound reopened, yet something in his trembling honesty touched her. For years she had begged for this moment, and now it was here, as fragile as glass. Clara returned that afternoon, her presence grounding the air heavy with grief. Naomi leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her strength faltering. Clara said firmly, "Truth is the only seed that grows into love. Lies only poison the soil." Samuel stood nearby, his eyes fixed on the ground. Naomi whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive him." Clara touched her shoulder gently. "Forgiveness isn't weakness, Naomi. It's choosing whether you'll carry his chains or set yourself free." The silence that followed was thick with choice. Samuel's hands curled into fists, not with anger, but with the terror of losing her. Naomi's gaze shifted toward him, searching, breaking, aching for an answer only he could give. That evening, Samuel found Naomi outside, standing barefoot in the soil, gazing at the horizon painted with fading light. He approached slowly, his voice raw. "I don't know how to undo the years I buried myself in silence, but I can start now if you'll let me." Naomi's throat tightened, tears welling but unshed. "Love isn't something you start when it's convenient, Samuel. It's every day. It's the choice you never made." His eyes burned with regret, but also with a determination new to her. He stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking. For the first time, he didn't hide behind pride or silence. "Oh." His words trembled, but his gaze stayed steady, pleading without demand. Night settled, quiet and heavy, as Naomi and Samuel sat on the porch side by side. The silence was no longer a weapon, but a fragile truce. Naomi whispered, "If I give you one more chance, Samuel, it will be the last." His chest tightened, every breath a vow. "Then I'll spend my life proving I'm worthy," he said, voice trembling but sure. Naomi's tears slid quietly, not of despair this time, but of cautious hope. The crickets sang in the fields, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and possibility. Their hands brushed lightly, tentative, unsure, but it was a beginning. A storm had broken them, but perhaps love could mend what pride had shattered. Dawn broke soft and gray, painting the fields in muted light. Naomi stood at the edge of the porch, her shawl wrapped tight, watching mist curl over the soil. Samuel joined her, silent but near, his presence heavy with unsaid vows. Naomi whispered, "This land has always had your heart, Samuel, but I have always wanted mine to live beside it." He turned toward her, eyes heavy with guilt, yet warmed by hope. "I was blind, Naomi, but I see you now." Her chest rose with shaky breath, unsure if his words could root into action. The world felt fragile, like dew clinging to grass, waiting for sun to either nurture or burn it away. Later, Naomi tended to the garden, her hands pressing into damp earth. The soil gave way beneath her fingers, reminding her of roots that take time to grow. Samuel approached slowly, carrying a basket of tools, his steps hesitant but deliberate. "I want to plant with you," he said quietly, kneeling beside her. Naomi looked at him, her face unreadable. "Planting is easy, Samuel. Nurturing is what you've never learned." His eyes searched hers, pleading for a chance. For a moment, their hands brushed in the soil, the earth becoming both wound and promise. The silence carried more weight than words, but this time it did not feel like absence. That afternoon, Clara visited again, her sharp gaze softening at the sight of Naomi and Samuel working side by side. "So," Clara said, folding her arms, "the farmer finally learns love takes more than sweat." Samuel gave a small smile, weary but genuine. Naomi glanced at her friend, her eyes still carrying scars, but her lips curved faintly. Clara's presence reminded her that truth must anchor her future, no matter how much she longed to trust. "Don't let him forget this," Clara whispered as she hugged Naomi tightly. Naomi's arms held fast, knowing her friend had been her strength when Samuel was not. Samuel stood nearby, watching, realizing love was not just won, it was guarded. As evening fell, Samuel sat with Naomi on the porch, their bodies close but not yet intertwined. He whispered, "I've feared love because it can break a man more than any storm." Naomi turned, her eyes soft but firm. "Love doesn't break, Samuel, it asks for surrender." He lowered his gaze, then reached for her hand, his touch hesitant, trembling. Naomi let his fingers rest against hers, but she did not close the gap. "I need to see more than words," she murmured, voice steady. The lantern flickered between them, the flame fragile yet alive. The night hummed with crickets, holding its breath for a future yet unwritten. That night, Naomi stood alone in the yard, moonlight bathing her in silver. She whispered into the quiet, "Love is not easy, but I will not settle for less than its truth." Behind her, Samuel lingered on the porch, his silhouette framed by shadows. He whispered into the dark, "I will learn, Naomi, even if it takes a lifetime." Their words never reached each other, yet the night carried both vows, hers demanding, his pleading. The final silence was haunting, filled with both hope and ache. The land stretched wide, indifferent, yet eternal, a witness to love's fragile rebirth. And as the crickets sang, the story closed with a single, unforgettable truth. Love either dies in silence or it fights to live.